Hello, this video is all about light and plants. It's a topic that's covered a lot, but I think there's some aspects that aren't made clear, which I discovered when I tried to grow a lot of plants in a very dark house in a dark country. One important thing to remember is that light changes a lot, especially here in the UK. In summer we get a lot of, well, we don't get a lot of light, we get some light. In winter we don't get any light. In warmer countries you could just move all the plants closer to the windows, but here it's too cold near the windows, so that is something that you need to consider. So in my office here we've got plants on the windowsill and I don't close the curtains ever, because it would create a pocket between the curtain and the glass, and then that's too cold, it would kill my plants. That's fine for succulents, but anything else it would kill. Another thing, and I see this asked all the time on Google because I think people will continue to ask until they get the answer that they want. I know, because this used to be me. People want to know if you can grow a plant in a room with no lights or no windows. No, you can't. The problem is the rooms we have with no windows tend to be rooms we don't go in very often, like bathrooms. And if it was a living room with no windows, then that's a bit different, because if you're in there all day with the lights on, that's enough light to keep some plants alive. They maybe wouldn't thrive, but the light would be on. So there would be some light, even if it's artificial. In a bathroom, the light isn't going to be on all day, and it would kind of be a waste for the sake of just having a plant in there when it's never going to thrive anyway. You may as well just have a fake one. Or you can always cycle plants in and out, but it's a bit of a faff. No, don't do it. You can try, but I personally don't think it's worth it. Also, rooms with no windows tend to be cold. So again, you're really limiting the plant that you can have, and that plant is going to have a really sad life. So don't do it. It's the same with looking for plants that are happy living in low light. There aren't really that many. You may get some that will survive. It's often advised that we get snake plants to go in low light places. A snake plant won't necessarily die, but it's far away from what they would live naturally. They would live in a far more arid, bright environment, so you're sort of giving them the opposite of that. So yeah, they won't die, but you're not going to get a lot of growth, and you're probably going to end up with quite a sad, spindly looking plant. Get a fake one. There's some really good ones now. A lot of people look for plants that will go in medium spots, and there are a lot of plants that are quite happy to live in medium light. It's the equivalent of the dappled light in the rainforest, sort of on the forest floor. The issue we have there is that plants that will thrive in medium light are picky as hell. They will tolerate brighter light, they will not tolerate low humidity, they will not tolerate underwatering, they will not tolerate overwatering. They get root rot quite easily because they like a moist soil, so then we tend to... No, they don't get root rot quite easily. They want us to overwater them. We try and do our best for them, and we end up giving them root rot, and then they die and they blame us. So I'm talking calathea, ferns, you know, the usual suspects. And they will thrive in medium light, but they need to be kept warm. They won't want to be in a draft. They won't want to be next to another plant. They'll get thrips, they'll get spider mites. So yeah, if you've got medium light and you want plants that will thrive there, you've got a long journey of plant care ahead of you. But they are beautiful plants, which is why this is why we keep calathea, because they are beautiful, even though they drive us mad. Bright indirect light is the holy grail for a lot of people when it comes to plant care. And this is bright indirect light is basically sort of about a couple of feet away from a window, maybe like there, like this corner here is medium, and sort of here is bright and indirect. But because the window is sort of quite short, this is west facing, so it should be quite bright, and it kind of is in summer. When the sun is beating in summer, it's bright and indirect. It never gets bright light just because of the angle of the window and the angle of the sun, because the sun's quite high in the sky when it's coming through here. I don't know what all this is. But again, bright indirect light where I live, in deepest, darkest North Yorkshire, is very different to bright indirect light that you'd get in Arizona. You may be able to move your plants further away. So you have to sort of look at It's hard to assess because we can't see light. That isn't true, we can see light. I've never found an app that was in any way reliable when it comes to measuring light, but you just sort of have to judge, put plants there, and if they're not growing very well, then maybe move them closer. And that sounds really difficult to tell, but you will be surprised at how quickly plants respond to a change in light. I'm talking like hours. So move them closer to the window, further away. Some plants might be perfectly happy, like I've got plants 8 feet away from the window. Like this monstera is quite far away, and yeah, he doesn't grow brilliantly here, but he does grow, he puts out leaves. I'm not going to get those big fenestrations here, but if you want something leafy, a monstera in medium light will do absolutely fine. Even low light plants or medium light plants like Calathea will probably do fine in bright indirect light. They certainly do here. They're actually, in fact, ferns, especially maidenhair ferns, grow really well in bright indirect light. The only plants that won't grow in bright indirect light here are succulents. They get quite I don't know how to say that word. I'll put it on the screen. Foliated basically means leggy, and it looks grim in succulents. But my succulents have to live out, well, they don't have to, but they live outside in the summer, and then in the winter they have to go, they actually crowd them around my aero garden because that is quite a strong grow light. But succulents need a lot of light, otherwise they will not grow well. They're a very easy care plant if they have enough light. You won't need to water them very often. They'll grow, they won't need anything from you, but they need the light. So if you put a succulent on a shelf somewhere, or God forbid in a terrarium, and it dies, it was always going to. There's nothing you can do about that because they need the light to grow properly. Where they come from, they've got no nutrition, they get barely any water. All they've got is the sun, and there's a hell of a lot of it. So putting a succulent somewhere where it's getting as much humidity and water as it wants, but not so much light, it's not really going to help it. As you know, if you watch my plant tour, I don't ignore my plants in winter. I do make sure they're watered enough, but I try not to worry about any crappy new growth that comes out on them or if they've stopped growing, because in the summer I make up for lost time by putting them outside. It took me a while to be confident enough to do this, just because I was scared that they will get covered in bugs, but actually for every bug that they get, there'll be another bug that'll come and eat it, so it's fine. As long as you make sure they're sprayed off before you bring them back in, bugs aren't really an issue. The difference you'll see when you put your plants outside is astonishing. So I put my monstera, this one, outside for the first time last year. I put it outside in the shade of my shed. I mean, it seemed dark where it was compared to the kitchen that it had been in before. And by the end of the day, it had already started putting out a new leaf. And I obsess about my plants, so I would have seen had it had that new leaf. It had done it within a day. So this summer I'm gonna make sure that a lot of them are outside, and you can't put them like directly into the sun. So as I say, my garden's west facing. They'll go at the end of the garden in front of the shed, so they'll get morning light east facing, which isn't as strong, and then when the sun's high in the sky, the shed will protect them. But as I've said a million times, I live in the UK. We might get blazing sun for 3 hours a day, and it's unlikely to be enough to burn them unless they're like out in the blazing hot, unless they're in direct sunlight. But I have left them in direct sunlight in the blazing heat in August, and they were fine. You could leave your plants outside in a hot country for 20 minutes and they'll be burnt to a crisp. It really just depends on where you live, how much wind there is, how much moisture there is in the air. The only thing about putting plants outside is because they're growing so much quicker, they use a lot more water, as well as the water will evaporate and there's more wind, so that'll evaporate it quicker. I don't know if that's true. You need to water them more often, like a lot more often, like every day, possibly. But they grow so quickly. So what I do is I grow them in the summer, then I bring them in the winter and they do nothing and they just sit there all sad. And then they go out again the next summer. And it works okay. It means that I don't need to panic too much about plants. I also have grow lights. I love grow lights, but I'm in the very fortunate position that my boyfriend has fish tanks. He is obsessed with them, and he has been taking care of fish for longer than I've known him, so like over 20 years. So he gave me 4 aquarium lights. They're the fluval cob. You'll see them on the houseplant tour. They're just like little spotlights. We zip tie them to the bookcases and they are incredible. I can get growth from Hoya in winter. Even sad Hoya that I bought for like £2 because they were dying, I can get growth from them. It's not great growth, but it's growth. And they're sort of quite small and unassuming. You could hide them, and the light is white without being stark, so it's not right. People used to think that plants only use red and blue light, which was why, well, it wasn't why, but we'll get to that, which was why grow lights were always traditionally purple. Red and blue makes purple. But then scientists discovered that actually they do use a bit of white and green light. Is that right? But basically they can use all of the spectrum. Say your living room has no windows, but you've got, say, a philodendron. My imperial red grows fine, like it grows well under a regular 60-watt light bulb. It's not a grow light, it's just a light bulb, and it grows, you know, I get big leaves from it, it's fine. So plants can use any light from any source. There are wavelengths they prefer, but they can utilise any light because they need to survive. But you will notice when you're shopping for grow lights, there's still a lot of the purple ones for sale, and it's because the diodes are cheaper. You don't need the purple light, but white ones are fine. If you like the purple ones, go for it. If you want red ones or blue ones, fine. But you can get white full spectrum grow lights and they are just as higher quality as the purple ones because the plant can use all of the light. You can tell I have a very rudimentary grasp of this, but if you don't want purple grow lights, you don't have to have them, is what I'm trying to get at. I also have one of those cheap gooseneck grow lights from Amazon that loads of companies sell them, and they're fine. Like, I use them for my peace lilies and it still produces leaves in the winter. They're not variegated because it's not that strong, but they will do the job at keeping your plants alive. They'll give them enough light to keep going. You might not get great growth, but you won't get decline either. And in winter, asking for growth is a bit much. It's kind of like a bonus. That is here anyway. If you have a darker house, I have quite a dark house, you may just have to limit the types of plants you can have. There are some gorgeous plants you can get that are medium light. I wouldn't necessarily start with the calathea because they do tend to die. But aglaonema, ferns, but you will need to get a humidifier if you don't have high enough humidity because they will struggle. And you may find that you get crispy tips from tap water, and you might need to play around with watering so you learn what each plant likes, but they are beautiful plants. So don't think that lack of light means you can't have nice plants, but plants always grow best in bright light, and they always will. There is no plant, because that's what feeds them. That's where they get their energy to grow from. I do want to quickly mention Monstera in the light thing, just because they do have a sort of, you can keep Monstera in low light. They're actually very hard to kill. I've not killed one, and this one, I've had him for years, and he's lived a cycle of neglect. He's better now though. In low light, they will produce leaves, but they tend to be small. But if you put them outside, they will grow big, massive leaves quite readily. But they need that light. It's actually quite hard to give them too much light. And there are actually photos online of, so Monstera come from the rainforest. Let's say Brazil, I don't know, I think so. South America. And they were either taken elsewhere for some reason. They grow in a lot of different places. They're actually an invasive species, probably because we took them as opposed to them accidentally stowing away. I mean, it would be hard for a plant to do that. But there are pictures of them growing up trees in Florida in bright, harsh sunlight. And yeah, they'll have brown tips and a bit of burning on them, but they are massive. So you can't give Monstera too much light. You can give them too little, you can give them none. But they will grow, but they will be small and spindly and a bit crap. But if you give them a lot of light, they grow incredible really quickly. I mean, they will only grow fenestrated leaves when they're, I want to say, a couple of years old. But the faster you can grow them, the bigger they will grow those leaves. They grow though, they develop the fenestrations in their leaves. We don't actually 100% know why, but they think it's to allow light to go down to the lower leaves and it's also, as they grow higher, the wind will be stronger, so it makes them sturdier because the wind can pass through them as opposed to like blowing them. If you're like, oh, my monstera doesn't have any holes in the leaves, it's not growing in splits, put it outside. Even if it's just like, even if when you go to work in the morning you just take your monstera outside and plonk it outside and then bring it back in when you come back, you'll be surprised at how different, at how quickly it will grow. Just make sure that you keep on top of watering it, and don't put it in somewhere, try and keep it in the shade at first, just in case you do have really harsh sunlight and it burns, but it will get used to the sun and it will grow really quickly. I think I've covered everything I wanted to. If there's anything else you want me to, if you want me to Google, or that you think I might know, then feel free to leave me a comment and I'll link a article about light that I've got on my website. I think that's it. Bye.